Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, social media, pop culture, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. If this is your first time here to the channel, I'd like to welcome you guys here and would encourage you quite kindly to click on that watermark down there in the bottom right hand corner to subscribe, or the red subscribe button below the video, as your guys' participation is greatly appreciated. In gaming news this week, as of this very recording, Activision is releasing the Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War multiplayer reveal trailer, which I will probably be going over in another video, and you guys will be able to check that out up there in the top right hand corner. As well as I've had a chance to play the Frontier Pass for Civilization 6, and it's pretty neat, all the things that they have included. Lots of new updates, new civs, and a ton of content. So if you guys have been anticipating seeing some Civilization 6, perhaps I'll be putting that out very soon. As of this week here in Georgia, we have learned that over 1,000 people have double voted in June and in August early elections. So I'd like to read from WSB TV Channel 2 here in Atlanta. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger announced his office found nearly 1,000 cases of double voting during the June and August elections statewide, and they could face felony charges for it. At a Tuesday morning news conference, Raffensperger said 150,000 people who cast absentee ballots canceled them at the polls, but those 1,000 did not. There are those who want to try to game the system, and that can't happen, Raffensperger said. There are 1,000 people out of 150,000 that actually double voted, knowing full well that they had filled out an absentee ballot, had mailed it back in, and then showed up the day of the election. Now, of course, President Trump was getting a lot of heat because of a kind of an ambiguous type statement that he had made. Of course, that was to bring attention on the validity and concerns about mail-in ballots. Now, there is a difference between a mail-in ballot and an absentee ballot. An absentee ballot you apply for because you're not going to be within your state or near a precinct to vote. So when people say, well, President Trump did a mail-in ballot, no, actually he did an absentee ballot because his actual residence is in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, and he resides in Washington, D.C. since he is the president. Now, many people here in Georgia did receive applications to apply for mail-in ballots. Now, apparently 150,000 people had either applied for these mail-in ballots or perhaps even absentee ballots. There weren't like really strong statistics or information concerning the two different types or how many of each were received, or particular party affiliation as to who these particular individuals were. So I don't suspect that we'll hear a lot about which particular party it was, because probably there's going to be Republican and probably Democrats mixed in there. I heard something about, or had read in an article about, an individual who said they wanted to test the system, which is kind of foolish because, as you saw from the Secretary of State, it is a felony to double vote here in the state of Georgia. And it's early. We're still early into this election cycle. So it's going to be interesting to see if we're going to hear more of this type of activity throughout the rest of the states, because the Democrats, for the most part, have made mail-in ballots kind of their focus of attention because of the pandemic, which we'll just have to see how many people are going to go out there and actually either apply for an absentee ballot or apply for an absentee ballot and or a mail-in ballot, I should say there. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that, and how many people may have received the ballots without having requested them, depending on their residency within where they live, as well as their location of precinct. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it, because we're hearing from other states. But Georgia seems to be kind of the first of a lot of these things. You know, we were kind of the first state to come out of the pandemic, and now we've had our early voting back in June and August. I voted in June, so my vote has already been cast, so I'm not particularly concerned about it. As you guys know, I had shown you a ballot that I had received, But of course, I'm not going to fill that out, obviously knowing that I was just happy to just wait and vote. It's not a big deal for me. I was in and out of there in 7 minutes. I know that perhaps in certain precincts in Fulton County, we saw back in June, we're having issues, but these individuals have had 4 years to get all this straightened out, and it is the responsibility of those individuals within that community to make sure that people are able to vote, the machines are working, and that they're able to get everybody going. But again, that was back in June. Of course, we still had the pandemic going on then. And if people are out protesting, like they say, if you can protest in person, you can vote in person. I'm going to assume that many people have been going to the grocery store, running errands, going to doctor's appointments. Now people are going back to school. People are going back to work. That voting shouldn't be all that different than involving yourself in any of these other activities. But nonetheless, guys, I will leave a link to this particular article below this video. For those of you here in the States, you'll have to let me know down in the comments what you guys are planning to do to vote this year. Are you going to get an absentee ballot? Have you gotten one already? Have you applied for a mail-in ballot? Will you be using that to vote? Or will you be going to your local precinct? And what are your thoughts on this upcoming election? For me personally, I still believe that President Trump will probably win, and potentially a landslide. Now, I don't want to get too much hyped up or be too hubris about it, because you never know what can happen. But I feel that with the numbers that we're seeing, and even the Democrats can see the numbers, and they're very concerned and desperate. We've seen kind of the changes that they've gone through and what they're having Joe Biden do now. But I have a feeling that it looks pretty good for the president for right now. And it's kind of sad to see what the media is doing at their level of desperation as well. We've seen a lot of really nonsensical kind of tabloid type nonsense that ends up not being true. So the media, of course, has no particular authority or anyone that they have to answer to for this type of behavior and the types of articles that they put out. So they can pretty much voice their opinions through editorials, or they can just put out misinformation and just let it go and let the public think one thing while they correct it, or there is a correction later, because the idea, of course, is to bring people to their articles and to get people to watch their content. It's unfortunate to see, but I think with a Trump victory, it isn't just going to be a Republican victory. It isn't going to be just a conservative or right-wing victory. It's going to be a victory for the country again, because we can see what the president has done. The media has deliberately and intentionally and willfully ignored what has actually been achieved, what is actually being accomplished. If this were a Democrat president, we would be at the highest level of just the state of heightened happiness and perhaps joy with how much progress has been made and how much has been accomplished. But of course, it's always going to be one side or the other, depending on who the president is, whether the media is going to be doing one thing or another, or whether the people in the country are going to be aware of it. But even the polling, as close as they're saying that Trump is to Biden, or how the gaps are closing, there's always going to be those margins where the Democrats just give Biden more of a margin. So if the president is closing that gap and even surpassing him, then it's pretty obvious that the Democrats are in trouble. They'll never tell anybody how much trouble they're actually in. And of course, we talked about the red Mirage. Will we see a victory for President Trump, and then a lot of doubt and uncertainty be thrown out there about, well, ballots aren't in? And I even heard that Michigan said that they may not even have, or may need more time to count ballots, or may need more time before they can announce. And as we saw from Zuckerberg there on Facebook, that they will be censoring certain types of political information to include who has won. So it will be interesting to see who is Facebook going to rely on to give the results of the election night. It will all be very interesting, but we're getting very close, and we're seeing a lot of shuffling, a lot of moving. I'm very much looking forward to those debates, because I think that's going to be where the gap is definitely going to close, once people can kind of see what Joe Biden is saying, and Trump can reiterate what he has been able to accomplish, what he's been able to achieve, and what direction he wants to go in. Not to mention the fact that Hispanic approval, Black American approval is all up right now for the president. So it will be interesting to see how all this unfolds, but you'll have to let me know how you feel about it. And those of you in the UK and or Europe, do you think we're going to see very similar, are we going to see something very similar here as we did in the UK? Because all we heard about was Brexit, Brexit, Brexit up until December. It was just a constant flood of demonstrations and rallies about Brexit, how It didn't really, the people weren't actually able to voice their opinion when they actually had. People just weren't happy with the outcome. We've talked about that before when it comes to ideologies of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and things here in the country, in the United States, about really, it is really about the outcome and not necessarily about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and sometimes our laws, but actually the outcome. But nonetheless, guys, I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. I want to thank all you guys for your continued participation here, which has been very nice. So thank you for the likes. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the subscribes. Very much appreciated. And if you are following on DTube, BitChute, and on Parlay, I would ask you guys to give me a follow there as well. And if you are here on YouTube, that would be the obligatory channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe, along with notifications. That way you guys will know when the Friday vlog is available, as well as additional content here on the channel. And I'll see you guys right there behind the camera next week.